G'day. This afternoon we are online with Daniel Smith on the HSEQ Leaders podcast. Daniel, welcome.
G'day, John. Good to see you.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Yeah, we'll be seeing each other more, I guess, as well. Coming up, there's a few events in the calendar, but it's good to see you virtually nonetheless. For those, mate, that don't know you, though, if we're going to dive into it, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, no worries. Daniel Smith's my name. I've been in the safety game for about 12 years, I'd say now. So I started my journey in mining construction, going from a uni background with a commerce degree, never used it. And then at the end of last mining boom back in the day, thought I'd get a job as a labourer. And I tell you what, that was probably the best baptism of fire I think you could have hoped for, in terms of being able to get down the journey that I've gone down from there. So, and you know, for the last sort of 5 years, I've been in a manager position. And gone from one thing to the next, and really enjoying my career to date.
And what about you came off the tools as well, mate? You know, degree and then went onto the tools and then off the tools. It's not the most common of journeys, but it's good that we have some common similarities in that sense.
Look, I think it was really good for me to spend some time on the tools in terms of my being able to, if nothing else, just relate with the workforce. I'll happily admit my background, private schoolboy, and the rest of it, bit of a silver spoon in the mouth. So to go from that sort of background straight into university into more of a traditionally, you know, blue collar construction position, I needed to be knocked down a couple of pegs, which I think was really good for my development at a young age. And thankfully, I had the right attitude. I took on those lessons well, and I had the right people around me as well to sort of who were willing to train and mentor and impart that experience that they had on the young whippersnipper. So it was that was sort of my initial journey into HSE.
I agree. I mean, in terms of that as well, I wouldn't want to go back and do it now. Don't get me wrong, but certainly invaluable learnings just for as a professional into later life as a foundation. But what about outside of that professional capacity, Daniel? Tell me about yourself. What do you like to do outside of safety?
Believe it or not, I guess I'm a little bit of a risk taker. So I've fallen in love with boxing, actually. So that's been my sort of my passion for the last sort of 4 years. It's just almost taken over my life. A part of a local boxing gym here, and it's transformed me physically and also mentally. The mental challenge, it's almost like a chess game you've got to play whilst trying to avoid getting hit in the face, is quite the challenge. So that's something that I'm really into. I'm a footy lover as well. Love socializing, getting out there, and I've got a reasonably large friendship group, so plenty of drinks and carry on and having good times on weekends. I'm still kid free, so I can get away with it. Yeah.
I think we're pretty similar ages, and I think the kid-free phases are getting longer and longer. But what about, you know, going back to before, you know, how did you delve into that, I guess, a bit of that career progression? How did you go from, being on the tools? Obviously, the market changed a bit from sort of that post-recession, but how did you make that transition then into safety from that sense?
Yeah, no worries. Yes, so I was working as a TA, belt splicer. What else did I do? Mill relining for a little while. Some pretty manually intensive jobs. I was with an organisation that managed to take me on board, sort of as an unofficial sort of, you know, I got elected as a safety rep. I went and did my Cert 4, and I went down that sort of traditional path. And then I was fortunate enough to be given an opportunity as an HSE advisor for a smaller civil contractor out of nowhere, and I was really thrown in the deep end. It was the best thing that could have happened to me, though, because thankfully the site that we're on, the client that we were working for, their safety team was really good, and they were quite happy to sort of take me under their wing and to give me a bit of experience along the way. So that was really a positive journey, but that's sort of how I got into it. So went from blue collar working, got that traditional path of showing an interest in HSE. Unfortunately, I was on a site where it was some really terrible safety culture that it'll go nameless. And
Yeah,
I was involved. Yeah, I was involved. I was involved in about 3 near miss events that should have and could have killed multiple people, and it was all just swept under the carpet. The team there, that management team for that particular client, they just weren't interested in trying to improve things, and they're more interested in production. I truly think the whole industry's changed since then, and I don't think there's really players like that. And if they are, they sort of get found out really quickly. And sort of that was my drive into HSE. I felt like I could be part of that change in my little small part. And I enjoyed it. And I realized that HSE, it's not about compliance. It's not about trying to be a policeman per se. It's about building relationships with people, building that relationships with the blue collar workforce, which is something I was getting used to doing. And then how do you engage the management team and the supervision and the client from a contractor point of view as well. So that's what it's all about.
I think that's something super underrated, sort of the bridge between those two as well, between workforce and management. I think something that's often forgotten, especially for people as early on in their career as well, that haven't seen it, I guess, how it works in reality. But talking about early on in your career, what is the one piece of advice, if you could go back and give it to your younger self early on, as you were still learning and still grappling with it and still developing early on in your career, what would that be?
I'd say get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's my motto at the moment. And things that you're not very strong with, it might be a weakness. You might see it as a bit of a weakness. You might not be that great with paperwork or with talking with people in front of crowds and things like that. Get comfortable with that. Embrace it. Do what you can to make that weakness a strength of yours. It's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's going to suck, but you will be better off longer term, and you're going to grow as a person. You're going to learn resilience, and this is, from a general sense as well as from an HSE point of view. That's my biggest takeaways. Just get comfortable doing the things that make you uncomfortable.
Absolutely. I think, it's outside of even safety, I think that's so important because, I mean, there is that argument, play to our strengths, and you definitely should play to your strengths because that's, they're your strengths, but not forgetting about your weaknesses as well and developing that, because we all have areas for improvement. And I think it's too easy to just be like, oh, look, I'm just really good at systems, for example, but not becoming, say, a rounded professional, or in my sense, I'm just really good at talking to people. But mate, what's I guess you've hired safety professionals before, and we've talked about that. But what are you looking for when you're hiring in your team, and what are you looking for in terms of a professional sense?
Like I sort of mentioned before, it's all about relationships. How can this person forge relationships with the supervisors? How can they forge relationships with the blue collar workforce and management? I need that person to be able to influence people's decision-making abilities, not when they're sitting there watching them, influencing their decision-making whilst they're not there, when their backs are turned. How can you do that? It almost comes across as a bit of an arrogant thing to believe that you could influence someone's thought process. However, how do you do that? You do that building these relationships with people, and you get them to build trust with you. I think that is the number one for me for any safety professional. And then second to that, it's like, how do you approach difficult situations and how do you approach difficult conversations? those are sort of the more defined things that I look for as well.
Well, how do you, I mean, we'll come to leadership in a minute, but, how do you approach different conversations as a leader in that sense?
Look, it, I hate to say a bit of a cliche. It sort of comes down to experience. You get to learn the people that you're working with, and everyone's different. There's no rule book. You can't just approach everything with one holistic way. I think you need to tailor and be specific with the way you approach a conversation. If you know you're going to have a difficult conversation, what have you done about it? What kind of preparation have you done? How do you think it's gonna play out? Are you anticipating this person to become irritated and angry? Okay, so what measures can you put in place to mitigate that? So, and then that comes down to, I guess, planning your conversation and being able to respond without reacting.
I think you're absolutely right as well, and that's sort of the value that comes of experience is that often when we talk about leadership and communication, there's this whitewashing and like one size fits all, but there's so many different communication models out there that people have, right? Within an own team. And I guess it's knowing how to modulate that for the person and how they receive information, how they take feedback. But you're at that point now where you're stepping into, well, more senior leadership roles, but you're definitely in leadership roles. What does that look like for you, and how do you lead, mate?
You gotta lead by example. Okay. You need to empower other people to sort of think about how they're gonna execute something and own their decisions, and then back them in. Empower them to make those decisions. If it doesn't work out, let's learn from it. Okay, let's do that debrief. Let's have that discussion afterwards. Okay, so this was your plan. It didn't go the way we wanted it to. So what are we going to do next time? So I'm a big believer in empowering other people and backing them in. There's a reason why they've been hired. There's a reason why they're working part of my team. So back them in. And generally speaking, it seems to work pretty well. And that's, I guess, is my leadership style. Under the pump, I guess.
Yeah. And talking about being under the pump, and where do you see the profession evolving over the next few years? I mean, obviously there's an acute shortage and a huge demand for safety professionals, but how do you think that'll impact on the profession, and where do you see it going in your career over the next 5, 10, so on years?
Yeah, look, the profession isn't going away. I think there's going to be a heavy focus on some more of the ESG, environmental social governance component. I think that'll be something that you will need to be conversant with, having building management plans around net zero, or trying to have some sort of influence on that. I think the HSE space will be involved in that. Obviously, more and more about the digitization of the role, and the use of technology. The amount of AI coming out there at the moment, there's going to be, I think, a big mindset change and a heavier involvement about human factors rather than compliance, non-compliance. So it'll be about drilling down and working out why people are making these decisions. I think that'll become a bit more in vogue.
Absolutely. And I think of those 2 points, I mean, ESG is one of those from a recruitment point of view. 12 months ago, it was still really a buzzword. We weren't having conversations about it. And it's becoming more and more common. I mean, one of the challenges in that space is that it's still pretty new, and there isn't a huge skill set there, but you're right, like it is being absorbed by safety. And certainly then as well, your second point around AI and technology. I mean, there's been a big talk of that for years, but then seeing who some of the technologists are in safety and how they're applying it and how they're also being taken seriously now has been a big change as well that I've certainly seen, and it's exciting to see as well.
Absolutely, and it's making everyone's lives a little bit easier, everyone a little bit more efficient. So you got more time to focus on the things that matter. So I'm all for
it. Daniel, thank you so much for jumping on. It's good to see someone that's progressed so quickly at quite a young age to get to where you are. And I'm sure our listeners and viewers will appreciate your insights. And I certainly appreciate the fact that you've managed to still jump on as scheduled, even though you've got an audit tomorrow that you're madly preparing for. So thank you very much, mate. And looking forward to talking more in the future.
Absolutely my pleasure, John. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks a lot for joining us for another episode of the Safety Leaders podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure you reach out and connect with myself as well as Sundstrom Recruitment on LinkedIn. We are the specialists health and safety recruitment in WA. Looking forward to the next episode and maybe getting to know you. Cheers.